I left my family. I left my kids. I left my nightclubs, my parking company, $35 million to fight the fight.
Welcome only our Patreon family. This is some good bonus content for you guys. We wanted to bring you a little extra juicy mafia content. So today we're going to talk about something real quick. You're looking at it here. Other episodes have it as well. This is John's new book, Mafia International. I believe a lot of you guys on the Patreon have reached out about buying it or have already bought it. So if you want to buy it, johnnalight.com. Go check that out. And then also really quick, we just want to thank you as always for subscribing to the Patreon. We're trying to make it better every day. So if there are ways in which we can do that, please communicate that with us. We try with the live caller Q&A call-ins. Those are really fun for us because we've gotten to get to know a lot of you on a personal level and get to know a little bit about you, and hopefully as we continue doing them, get to know you better. So but again, if there are other segments, topics you want us to cover, if there are other ways we can interact with you, we're planning on trying to do some meet and greets when COVID is even more done, and starting in the new year. So that's something to look out for. But if there are other ways that we can continue to make your subscription on the Patreon even more worth it and enjoyable, and really feel like you're getting a bang for your buck, please make sure that you tell us and let us know, because that's of course the goal. But we thank you for all the people that have been supporting, who have just joined or have joined for a long time. Your support means a lot, and honestly, that money goes to production and just ways in which we can make the show better and getting guests and stuff like that. So really important that we have you guys. So thank you. But a little bonus, and we haven't talked about this on a regular YouTube channel, but Albert Anastasia. I don't really know that much about him, to be honest with you.
Albert Anastasia was a Mad Hatter. He was like the known murder inc. His group of guys were out doing all the killing. I mean, very, very famous group of guys that were killing and involved with him. Or back in that era was Lucky Luciano and Vito Genovese, and guys hear this name from me on a regular basis now because Anthony Ruggiano actually did a chapter in my book about himself, his father, obviously some things about me. And what everybody is, we're going to kick it back to his brother, Albert Ruggiano. Albert Ruggiano, I'm going to go back into the 70s. So in the 70s, Albert Ruggiano, Anthony was always in and out of jail and trouble. And Albert was the guy in our neighborhood, while his father was the boss, that really ran the streets. He was, if people look at Anthony and Albert when they were younger, good-looking guys, always dressed up. Actually, Anthony still looks like a young guy, and so does Albert. But Albert was the guy in our neighborhood. Nobody talked about anybody. If you're a young kid growing up in my neighborhood, everybody feared Albert, but everybody respected him. And Anthony would be on vacation, meaning in jail on a regular basis. So when he left, we all stayed by 88th Street Park. 88th Street Park, for the people that don't know from our neighborhood, is in Ozone Park area right on Atlantic Avenue. And it was a park that everybody played handball at, would play softball in the park. The kids would be running around in the water. They had the sprinklers out in those days. And Fat Andy's house was right there in the middle of the block. Actually towards the corner. I think it was like the third house off the corner or something. And we'd all be down there. We also played hockey, street hockey, on rollerblades in the schoolyard there. So that was like a sports arena of kids and everybody in the neighborhood that either was selling drugs or hanging out. There was a guy, Big Freddie, around Albert and Anthony. There was McDermott that was around Albert and Anthony. The Grecos, the jockeys that people hear me talking about, his nephew writes once in a while on the pages. And they controlled those streets more than any individual that anybody knew in our neighborhood. They were very good with their hands. They were boxers. They were up at the Lost Battalion Hall. At the same time, and I've said this over again with Jerry Cooney, they were my baseball coaches. And we all basically checked in with them. But the difference of these guys were, not only were they feared, they were so well liked. And Albert had a hell of a personality that everybody really liked him. And you guys know Anthony's personality because he's on shows and you hear him and you see what he's about. But their father raised them to be very humble but tough guys. And, when we would go down to 88th Street Park, just to get a glimpse and hang out, these guys, they were older than me because I'm a kid. So I look at Albert and Anthony and I look up to them and, I'm kind of like in their family house and then, so it's kind of part of the family. But other kids, and I'm talking about teenagers or drug dealers or anybody that's moving around, they didn't want to do nothing without asking their permission. And, so when Albert moved the marijuana business back in those days, you're talking again in the early 70s, mid 70s, late 70s, was huge, even into the 80s, was a huge business. Albert controlled that neighborhood with that and his guys. And along with that, he controlled the Kennedy Airport as far as all his guys Roy Greco, Bobby Greco, excuse me, would be fencing all this stuff to a couple that we had. But these were all their guys, all those people. They had another guy, Bobby, around them that was also dangerous, that would do anything. So they had the crew. They controlled the neighborhood. And it was their neighborhood to control bookmaking, to drugs, to beatings, to whatever was going on in the neighborhood was on their call. And, so Albert was that guy. So when someone talks about who was groomed in this life and how, it was definitely through Fat Andy Ruggiano. His connections, obviously, his killings that was well known and documented as kids. The whole area knew that he was raised around Albert Anastasia, and he took over our neighborhood from the Wagner brothers, Faticos, they called Danny and Charlie brothers, and Fat Andy. Stepped in the shoes because he was involved, he even met them. How wild he was robbing their card games. So with his partner, Tony Lee. So anybody that, keeps asking me these stories of really who was the guy in the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was the Ruggiano family, and it was Fat Andy, and it was his sons. And they had a reputation of being typical what you look up to as gangsters. Such nice guys, but such dangerous guys. And, we were all groomed. The whole neighborhood was groomed through that family.
Could you tell that they were like as dangerous as they were? Or the average person?
I mean, the average person was like the guy, Patty Antique, I tell that story, who was a wild man shooting up, and Bobby gave him a warning from Albert, and Albert got, told his father what happened. And the next thing is, the difference is when guys miscalculate kindness for weakness, he went on the run, he left his son, and Calvin went off a 3-story building. So, there was no talking. They didn't talk. They didn't brag. They just did it. And then the next day when you see them, they're giving you a hug and a kiss, hello, and talking baseball. I mean, we would talk sports day and night. And when I just did that show on ESPN, last week, they asked me, what did you guys talk about all day? And I said sports. All day we were sports fanatics, either gambling or playing, but we were, this is all we did. And this is all Albert did, was mentor kids in a positive way into sports. I got to say, he might have been a gangster, but he was such a positive influence.
But do you think that at the same time he's positively getting them towards sports, but in a way he's also making himself more comfortable with them, and probably grooming them more towards the mafia life?
No, Albert didn't groom him. And Anthony even Anthony did a show, and when he came out of jail, he asked his brother, why am I not around anymore? What would you do had you let Johnny A. go? Yeah. And, I'm still a young guy. So really, here's a perfect example of how nice he was. Because if he was a typical gangster, he would have said, you're here. You're not going anywhere. He didn't do that. So, he didn't groom. He had his own guys. He didn't need to groom anybody else. He had a big crew of guys already. He was making a ton of money already. He didn't need to do anything. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, in our neighborhood, drugs fucked up a lot of guys.
Who do you think were the biggest, I don't like to use the word groom, but people that really tried to get a lot of the young guys into mob life?
All of them.
Yeah.
You know what? I used to tell guys all the time, with guys when I had a problem, when I send these young kids, you better look out, because the young kids are not mature enough to talk. They're only there for one reason. If you don't do what the message is, you send the message, you owe money, or you send the message and they don't respect the message or accept the message, The young guys are only there to kill or shoot and hurt, and they're trying to prove themselves.
Yeah.
Just like I did. It's when the older guys come, it's a conversation. 99% of the time, it's just a conversation because they're street savvy. They know how to pass that message.
Right. And for you, I mean, did you look up to Anthony Ruggiano Sr. like that?
Oh, Fat Andy, yeah. It was like, he's like he was at all our baseball games. He would sit there at our base. You would never know who the guy was. This is old school gangsters. They act like they're just nobody.
He was a big guy, yeah.
Yeah, he was a big guy. He's thick, and he'd call you over, with his scruffy voice. Come here, kid.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're gonna get a hit today. And we had a great team.
He was violent.
Oh my God, Albert Anastasia. He was. All they did was that's how they got the nickname Murder Inc. because all they did was kill and go on crazy missions.
Isn't that crazy? These are the same guys at the baseball games, like coaching
Well,
kids?
because the old mob guys were they used to talk about this. They were your hair cutter, the barbershop guy, your shoe shine guy, your butcher. You wouldn't know what they did. So when you see Fat Andy at the games, and he was, he would dote on his sons. He loved his sons. I mean, he has a daughter, Francine, but I didn't see that part of with his daughter because I'm around the guys, with the boys. But he loved his sons, and he groomed them. I mean, we used to go into the city to the Red Parrot. We got treated like kings. So, and I'm real young. They're a couple of years older than me. So when we're with these guys, and you're watching the way Andy acted, Fat Andy acted, you would never know. It's just the kids in the neighborhood we knew. But if an outsider, they would just think he's just another guy watching the kids play sports. Yelling and, sitting there clapping and it's just they had a unique personality of a family. This is why people say to me, why do you talk this way? Because when I did believe in the life, I believed it around guys like them.
Yeah.
And, they were so nice, like you just said. He was never supposed to let me leave.
Mm.
He was supposed to tell me. He should have said to me, sorry, John, I love you, but you're not going anywhere. Yeah. You're staying here. And he could have did it anyway, but he didn't want to he wasn't that guy.
Right.
He had his own crew. He had his own money. He was like, just let the kid. And really, he looked out for me. He would tell me, like, if there was somebody else he wanted an end from. He had a problem one time with one of my old partners. My old partner was panicked. It was before he was my partner. And he says, Albert wants money. So I went to see Albert. And I says, Al, the guy's involved with me. He goes out, my sister at the time. He goes, John, I don't want nothing. It's for you? No, you take it. Just tell him that you're giving it to me. Mm-hmm. He goes, you take it. I go, no, I ain't going to do that. I'm just going to. So then, my sister's old boyfriend was like, why don't you just go partners with me? And I go, all right. And then I ended up going partners with him because he figured, all right, it's better. Right. And we started making a ton of money. But this is just the gentleman that Albert was and Anthony was, really. Yeah.
I think it's so fascinating. Like, the psychology of the mob is something else. You guys are trained killers, but at the same time, there's like it's ironic and hypocritical in a lot of ways, right? Because it's all about being a gentleman. But
you're supposed to, let me tell you, the people that don't know, you're supposed to be winning people over with your personality, not violence.
Right.
You're supposed to want them to be afraid of you, but you want them to like you. So you learn a psychological game since you're a kid.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they need to know, right? When you're on the street, they need to know that if you fuck me over, I may not say nothing for 5 years or 7 years, but trust me, that day's going to come when you're going to get killed. Yeah. It doesn't, one thing you learn in jail and in the street as a gangster, be patient. Mm-hmm. Let a year go by, let 2 months go by. It's the dummies that react right away in this life.
It's funny. I was talking to, who was I talking to? Oh, it might have been Josh actually the other day. And I was like, it's remarkable how you're very patient, but you're also you're always early. I gotta say that, which is fantastic to work with. And I try to do the same. But it's like, I feel like you have a very good, more than the average person, ability to just wait, whether it's actually waiting for time or just be patient, mentally. There's just this weird, calmness that I think that you can tap into that a lot of average people sometimes can't.
Well, you know why? I think that through being a businessman, you learn not to make decisions fast.
Yeah.
Right? Being involved with guys like Andy and Albert and guys like Blackie, Charlie Luciano was my father. They teach you to keep your mouth, shut your mouth, and they teach you also if you have a problem with a guy, you might see him 5 times. Don't say nothing 5 times because he's quiet. He thinks everything's okay. And then don't worry, on the 6th time, you can take care of him. He ain't going nowhere. And then they also teach you the more problems the guy has, the more enemies he has.
Right.
When you do take care of it, nobody knows who did take care of it.
Right.
So you don't need to let everybody know you took care of it. It doesn't really matter. The idea is it's going to get taken care of. So the problem in this life, guys think because 3 years or 4 years went by, like you heard me say this, the guy Paul I shot that hit my sister, I think I shot him 9 years later. I've seen him a lot. And then finally I got him 9 years later. So, when we do some of these things, people think, he ain't doing shit. A year went by, 2 years went by, 5 years went by. But you know what? You got all the time in the world.
So why'd you decide to do it 9 years later?
For that same reason. Because I know on the clock, there's a million. It's like today, if you think about how many people you can have a problem with, the average guy, they got tons of them. So it's not a race to get each guy. You'll get them.
Yeah.
And when you're ready to get them, you'll get them. And you know what? And let them worry about when you're going to get them.
Yeah.
Because, you know how people end up dead? Because they relax and they're stupid in this life. Or they don't know the life, really. They just talk too much, and they think that, you know what, they're too arrogant and they get an ego. But when the guy's very good at what he's doing, he knows that he can do it whenever.
Yeah.
And this is one of the biggest things you learn in jail is patience. Because if you don't learn patience in jail, and you learn it, listen, it ain't easy. That's why I'm very honest when I'm talking to kids about you don't want to go to jail. Because you don't know the emotional suffering you get. The physical suffering you can put up with. When guys will talk about, this guy got beat up. Everybody gets beat up. Everybody gets sucker punched. Guys in our life, we all get stabbed, or we get shot, or we get battered, or they catch us short. Or, it's just another day you got to come back. Mm-hmm. So you choose the day that you want to come back. Like somebody asked you, if me and you got into a fight and you asked me, is it over? You going to believe me if I tell you, if I say it's over? What does it matter if I tell you it's over? You really going to believe that? That's how dumb some guys are. Willie Boy Johnson is the guy that cooperated, right? He was the guy who cooperated. And he asked John, were we okay?
Yeah.
And he told him, yeah. And then he ended up dead a couple years later. Why would you believe him? That is, you're a street guy. You know better. It doesn't matter. There's no sense of even having that conversation.
Yeah. Interesting. Damn.
That's the life. That's why there's such treachery in it.
Well, yeah, it's just because it's just like you're trapped. You're so trapped.
I'm trying to think of a story where a guy got killed, 10 or 12 years later, where guys are getting hit from something that happened 15. They're like, why'd you keep him around so long? I was making money with him. So I kept him around. As soon as the money stopped, they said, I knew I was going to kill him one day, and I just killed him. Whatever reason. Or you ever hear, my enemy's enemy is my friend. So there's a lot of guys that stay friends with each other, and they really don't like each other just for business. So if somebody reads through the treachery of the life from Lucky Luciano to Vito Genovese, just look at that relationship.
Right.
Read the history on those two guys, and you'll see what I'm talking about treachery. They used each other. They started off as friends and really not friends. And they set each other up, and there was rumors that it was Luciano that set up Vito to go away for whatever. But that's the history of the mob that we're trying to tell people. It's not as glorious as everybody thinks.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of that extra insight into the life. Yeah, thank you guys again. I mean, this is again, this will only be on Patreon. So we want to thank you again for subscribing to the Patreon, for making it this far, for watching this video, for watching all our videos, for continued support. Really does mean a lot. And so we'll talk to you guys on our next Q&A. And John and I are both going away for a little bit of time, but we'll be back, and we'll be continuing to post our content every week as we do.
And one more important thing, everybody remember, women never forget. So don't sleep with one eye open. They're like gangsters.
John learned the hard way.
They're like gangsters. You got to say like this. Sleep with one of those patches that you really can see through. If you did anything wrong, your wife ain't forgetting about it for sure. All right, everybody, enjoy your summer.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.